To have any success and climb ranks faster, you need to understand these core principles in Valorant. The ultimate goal in the game is to achieve this triangle and be one of the top 500 players. However, you should actually be trying to master this triangle instead. Let me explain. Your skill in Valorant is dependent on these three core principles: aim, movement, and game sense. Now, if you switched over from a game like CSGO, Fortnite, Overwatch, you may already have a good understanding of these principles, but it's always good to understand how they're applied to Valorant to get the most success. So let's break this down, beginning with the most important skill to master, aim. Aim is not a singular thing, but rather composed of many different elements when practiced individually will give you better aim in Valorant. To start out, we have your raw aim. Simply put, this is how comfortable you are with your mouse movement translated to your crosshair movement, and it can be calculated using your DPI and sensitivity that you're using. Now, most high-ranked players range between 240 to 330 eDPI, but it's really a personal preference and you should experiment and find what's comfortable for you. Running too low or high of a sensitivity, you might find that you're having trouble tracking the enemy players in front of you. The second thing in aim is your crosshair placement. Now, it's pretty self-explanatory, but there are a few things that you should know about. To start out, as you're scaling up different parts of the map, you should always be holding positions where you expect the enemy to be. This is going to help you with your reaction time and give you an advantage in the gunfight. The second thing you should know about crosshair placement is even when you're holding angles passively, you want to understand where you're placing your crosshair. The enemy player might slow peek you or they might swing out super wide, so you want to make sure you're compensating for each accordingly. The third element of aim is your weapon mastery. Now, with the variety of guns that we have in Valorant, you want to make sure that you get practice with each. Each gun has a slightly different fire rate, different recoils, and different spray pattern. The more practice you get in the range and death matches, it's going to better translate to your competitive games, netting you more wins. Now, at minimum, I recommend you practice your Vandal, Phantom, and Sheriff, as those are the three guns you're most likely to use in competitive. And finally, we have the last element of aim, micro and macro adjustments. This is your ability to make small and big changes in your crosshair depending on the situation. For example, a micro adjustment is when you're holding a wide angle but the enemy player actually slow swings you and you can make that small adjustment to get the kill. And similarly, a macro adjustment is when you have to make a big change in your crosshair to kill the enemy player. Now that you have a good idea of what it takes to have good aim in Valorant, let's talk about the second principle, movement. The first key thing to know about movement is your positioning. You should never be out in the open just waiting for the enemy team to push you. And not only that, but I want to give you a key tip that's going to help you improve your positioning on the map. Anytime you're holding an angle on a map, just ask yourself, where can the enemy see me from? If the enemy players can push you from two different angles that are not directly in front of you, you have bad positioning. You should be playing positions where the enemy can only take fights directly in front of you, giving you an equal chance at winning. The second part about positioning is when you're holding angles, think about holding off angles. Just with these two simple tips on positioning, you're going to start to see drastic improvement in your gameplay. The second element to movement is correctly scaling up the map. You should never be holding W straight onto the site. You should be taking up small areas on the map and using your A and D keys to clear corners as you move up. The third element on movement is jiggle and jump peeking. Now, this is a relatively safe way of getting information on a particular area on the map. By jiggle and jump peeking, you're making it hard for the enemy players to hit you while you could get the information if they're holding that corner. The last element in movement is strafing. Now, strafing is simply just making it harder for the enemy players to hit you. Whenever you take a gunfight, there's no point in crouching and just making yourself an easier target. It's easier if you shoot a few bullets, strafe left, shoot a few bullets, strafe right, and repeat. Now that you understand good aim and movement fundamentals in Valorant, let's talk about the most complicated one. Gamesense. First of all, what is Gamesense? The way I like to understand Gamesense is it's your situational awareness of your game's progression and understanding your team and opponent's strengths and weaknesses. And this is something that's always evolving. Every game that you play is on a different map with different agents and different players. So you have to constantly learn and adapt every match that you play. But the very basics of Gamesense is coming up with good strats, ability usage and timing, information gathering, trading kills, communication, and so much more. But to simplify this a little bit, I like to ask myself one question at every game. How can we secure one round? Not the half, not the match, but just a single round. And then understanding how we can use our team comp to gather information, start trading kills, and put each other in positions where we're gonna strive. If you start to string rounds together, soon enough you'll win the match and start climbing ranks. Now that you understand the core principles behind Valorant, I want to give you one final tip. Next time you queue up ranked, each time you die in a round, write down why you think you died. Was it your poor aim, movement, or game sense? At the end of the match, you'll see where you can improve the most as a player and start working on those things. I hope this video gave you more insight into Valorant principles and how you can use this to climb ranks faster. I'm planning to release more videos in the future, so if you guys like this content, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.